Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Firstly, I'd like to announce you that definitely check our schedule before you plan to come any presentation, because some presentation were changed. Unfortunately, some speakers, they canceled their presentation, but also some new presentation were added, like this one, for example. So check schedule every time before you want to go to any presentation. We try to keep it up to date. Okay, so now I would like to introduce Alexander. I met Alexander for the first time just 2 days ago. We were invited to the panel discussion about internet censorship and freedom in Russia. And I was so surprised that we have common friends like Dmitry, Kim, and Ostap. And finally, I'm quite happy I'm able to know him personally. He will have a very interesting presentation. I'm looking forward to opt out in a context of Russian. Welcome, Alexander.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I was informed that I made to deliver this presentation only a few hours ago. So if you would not like to listen and see something about Russia, well, feel free to leave. I would not mind. I have great experience in working in internet service providers. I'm routing guy, I'm technological guy, but now in these two organizations, Roskomsvoboda and Internet Protection Society in Russia, I'm trying to advocate freedom. So I'm here and I would like to talk about opting out in the context of Russia of what happens last years and what consequences we already have and may have a lot. So in 90s and at the end of 80s, Soviet Union fall. People felt freedom. We had a great meetings inside Moscow. This is the biggest one. And for you not to sleep, I have, if you say what this meeting was about, I have a prize for you. So people was gathering, was protesting. Actually, they was somehow successful. Russia become independent. Everyone was really amazed of this. So we won. So we won. We no longer need to do this politics, Soviet Union fall. We need to do the things we really would like, do technology, grow up children. We had the first president, Yeltsin, you see, and he guaranteed us with his successor, but officially appointed about 20 years ago, that everything will go the same. But it is not. The situation was changing slowly. The freedoms were removing slowly. Legislations were changing slowly. And like in a story, when a frog, if you put it in cold water and starts boiling, it boils. The same things happen to freedoms in Russia now. Now, well, Russia looks like European democratic country, Western-like country. We have constitution, we have courts, we have everything, but inside it's not like this. Currently, in Russia, it's called Putin's vertical of power. Everything is under control in this vertical. Everyone have to be loyal, otherwise they lose this position and have issues. Everyone have to be loyal, up to the nurses in hospitals, down to school teachers. Especially, for example, it's really important for elections, because school teachers are the most of members of election commissions in Russia are school teachers. But they're also municipal workers, so they can be pressurized by the part of this vertical. Also, for these 20 years, real civil society, real civilian activities was replaced by fake ones. Yes, we have a lot of NGOs, some of them doing real charity, helping children. But mostly, if you see from outside, you see, yes, that's a real NGO. But inside, it's like a guy in previous photos. Few years ago, the traditional media like newspapers or TV channels which are being broadcasted are now also completely loyal. There is no possibility to deliver opinion which does not fit to the governmental ones. What's the solution to opt out to such situation? Well, that's very popular meme saying something. Just get and immigrate. Get and immigrate. There were presentations during this meeting about migration, immigration, or something like. It's not always possible, or not always easy, as we've seen earlier, just to leave country and forget your background, your roots, your neighborhoods, your relatives. Maybe we have ability to live to the internet, but our government, the state, the Putin's verticals of power, and notice the power of internet. This year, I think the officially measured audience of Russian internet overtook officially measured audience of TV channels. So they really had to do something with the internet. And also, like boiling a frog, and especially from technical points of view, internet have a really, really hard surveillance. European democracy, surveillance is prohibited. It is said in our constitution, but there are some exceptions. And with these exceptions, in time frame of more than 15 years, now our law enforcement agencies have right for bulk wiretapping. So everything without any control from third parties nowadays recorded and need to be stored for half of a year. Well, de facto it does not work. There is no such equipment, but government have such rights. Also, obligatory user identification. Here, well, I can connect to Wi-Fi. There are open Wi-Fis. In Russia, you have to provide your passport or be identified by your local cellular phone numbers, which can be provided to you only if you show your passport also. So the complete understanding of who's using internet is required by government. They are not using it yet, but they may use it. A lot of data retention also. De facto censorship also. Censorship is prohibited by Russian constitution. It is said directly. But we have to fight illegal or harmful information. De facto censorship started from protecting children from, it's exact translation, protecting children from harmful information, like how to commit suicide or how to cook drugs. But then a lot of other information were added to this list, including financial ones, including something like to harm nature. Procedures are unclear. How to get out of this list, out of block, is not obvious. And furthermore, it was developed not from technical side, it was developed from organizational side. Then they started blocking information about something illegal. So if you write something about those guys committed suicide, okay, your article may be blocked also. And more important, they started blocking information which is not officially approved. And it came to Bitcoin. Bitcoins are not officially legalized or exist in Russian financial space. There are, because some of information which might be blocked on the internet relates to financial cheatings of financial organizations, a lot of local prosecutors started requesting blocking websites related to bitcoins, related to cryptocurrency exchanges, related to cryptocurrencies at all, including just informational things. Actually, Roskomsvoboda was advocating usage of, we're still advocating usage of cryptocurrencies. And among one of our wins, we removed, changed legal practice and officially removed a lot of Bitcoin-related sites from block lists in Russia. But governments are still, it's a positive example, Roskomsvoboda won it. But we have fresh example of how government interprets usage of Bitcoins. Russian opposition leader Mr. Navalny collected donations using Bitcoins. but again, they had to put it back into legal space. So some people will exchange Bitcoin to real cash and then submit it as official donation to foundations. Now, it was really, I think, hugest operation of simulated searches since Stalin's repressions. So everyone who was related to this money and to these funds was declared as money launderers. So their accounts was arrested, and their homes, including homes of their relatives, were searched. There was about 200 simulation searches at 5 o'clock in the morning. So government, what's a message from this thing? Government does not let you opt out easily. If you're using some instruments which are not completely controlled by government, they will resist it. Maybe in modern European countries, they would not do like this. But you see, Russia developed more than 20 years to get this to get to current situation. Well, if traditional media, traditional broadcasting TV, traditional newspapers are not available for delivering information by opposition or just by people who are not supporting officials directly, they're using internet media. This is a YouTube channel again of main opposition politician, Mr. Navalny, and it's, as statistics says, more people watches it live broadcast than the first channel of Russian TV. You may think it could be easier, but not. Russian government tries to pressurize huge corporations to block this information, to make it unavailable, to somehow inhibit these activities, including attempts to inhibit activities of such companies in Russian legal space. For example, a few years ago, there was a regulation, there was a law that any official licensed media should have no more than 20% of foreign shares. So if you want to run a newspaper, you had to be Russian citizen, at least for 80%, or Russian organizations. So attempting to regulate huge media platforms are also going this way. But you see, if you want to opt out, maybe you would not like to use YouTube, because from one hand you're trying to run away from your government, from a huge force, but you had to use somebody else who is regulated differently, and no one knows how they will act in future. Very interesting things also appears with the internet and Russian regulatory and Russian law enforcement. You see, internet gives a lot of beautiful opportunities for you. You can run new application, you can run new technology service, you can bring and share a lot of information. But also, in Russia, law enforcement agencies, instead of searching terrorists in the mountains of Afghanistan and somewhere else, they are going to social networks, mostly WeContact, and then trying to find memes which looks like racists or extremists, or, well, you see, memes could be stupid somehow and could have additional meanings. But okay, you just find a picture, ask WeContact about real data of this user, and you, well, successfully found a terrorist, even if it's 14 years old somebody. Especially sad that such repressions appears in faraway regions of Russia. So Moscow is somewhere here. But the most repressions on the map, which creates both Roskomsvoboda and Internet Protection Society, each of these regions have its own FSB, subsidiary of KGB or anti-extremist police. They want to find some results. They're getting random people. If these people live in their regions, they opens criminal case and gets a checkbox, and the young people goes for real jail just for posting memes or reposting some other texts. But if somebody acts in public space and always continues saying something against officials, the internet may be used for constant repressions. Another example, which I would like to give, there was protest related to elections this summer in Moscow. And the people who was writing on Twitter or posting videos about these protests were declared organizers of massive riots and spent a lot of time just for posting a tweet. They spending a month in jail. This legislation was specially changed because it's not criminal code violation, it's civil code violation. And in Russia, and I think maybe in Czech Republic, previously the hardest civil code violation punishment was like 15 days in detention for driving drunk without consequences. But this was changed. If you tweet about not officially approved meeting, you can go for detention for 30 days. So internet, it's not a place where you can go out of a real life. The officials and state power starts using it as another possibility to pressurize you. That's short about Russia, but it brings us a set of other different questions. First of all, people at the beginning of this century opted out from participation in politics for participation in society. And that allows Putin's vertical to grow up and took everything in Russian life, to control everything. Can you really opt out without consequences? Can you opt out from civil life, from political life, and do this alone and be successful? What will be future consequences of such opting out? You see, we are looking in Russian history for 20 years. And I think even 15 years ago, no one could even imagine what will be happening now. I think even 2 years ago, no one could imagine what would be happening now with internet repressions, internet arrests. Also, we are here on a somehow technological conferences. In Russia, there are some movements when engineers, especially internet engineers, or engineers who develop surveillance systems, or engineers who develop censorship systems, saying, no, we are out of politics. We are just engineers. We are just doing our job. But what is the responsibility for that? How your technological results, your scientific results will be used in future, especially in modern world, which is really connected. So this is my questions to you. I think no one have a good answer for these questions. We need to discuss it and understand, well, how to live, how to opt out, or maybe for some cases we should get back in and opt in for such activities we really don't like. Thank you. Oh, I see questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, wait a moment. Thank you a lot for.
I hope the presentations will be published.
Yeah, I hope
so.
So
There are bonus slides telling about my organizations. So if you would like, you may look about them further.
Yeah, okay. Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot for your presentation, and I think we have a lot of people asking questions.
Thank you for the nice presentation. So this is the current situation. And is the situation getting better or getting worse? I mean, with freedom in Russia.
It's getting worse, and actually it's getting worse on the exponent things. So maybe you heard about so-called sovereign internet regulation. All this censorship and surveillance regulation related to the internet, they were developing for I think about 10 years now. And for example, a government invents content blocking in light form and thinks that it will work. Then they add, for example, political sites like Granny.ru, at that moment Kasparov, opposition website run by former World Chess Championship. And then it appears that de facto such blockings does not work. So this information easily can be accessed. Not instantly, but easily. They're improving regulation-related content blocking. It's still available. Then they're adding ISP's responsibilities, and it's still available. And they're adding more and more and more. Previously, content blocking responsibility was only on ISPs. Then they added it to search engines. So Yandex and Google had to remove illegal Russian information from their search results. Then the government invented so-called information distribution intermediaries with the same responsibilities. And it's still not work. So now they're inventing sovereign Russian internet, which should be started on the 1st of November. There are still not all documents published related to it, but we still think it would not work for government, for restricting information flow to citizens by government.
Thank you for the presentation. You have mentioned censorship and actually lawmaking leading towards the illegality of the quite common situations which we experience everywhere. Could you also elaborate on propaganda, how it evolves since 90s?
Well, not exactly my question, but I live in country, so I think that media was really free until maybe 2003. 2002, 2003, there existed all country broadcasted channels, and there was a lot of free newspapers. Then propaganda started changing slowly. First of all, not just governmental media, but also private media was involved. And I've mentioned Putin's vertical of power. It does not include just state employees. It also includes friendly oligarchs. So there are some state-run media, state-owned medias, but other all-Russian medias are owned by Putin's friends or companies which are owned by Putin's friends. And to be fair, I stopped watching official news at about 2014. Previously, yes, you can just watch news to see trends of government. But after that, it became complete propaganda working not just outside. It's complete propaganda working towards Russian citizens. Well, we are joking that it looks like we live in Ukraine, because any news program on main channels will include Ukrainian questions on how things are going bad in Ukraine. Well, we have a lot of troubles and problems and issues inside Russia.
Okay. This was about, let's say, formal or normal media. Is there also any evolution in, let's say, internet-related media, or I mean something like internet farms for influencing the forums or something, which is evolving since 90s?
It's much better. Situation is much better with internet media, because you need permission. It's like permissionless innovation, permissionless media stream. And nowadays, from a Soviet Union times, there was a special skills for our parents. It's like reading in between lines. So they were reading official newspaper and understanding how situation works. Now, if you read official media or close to official media, you're also reading between lines. It's really important, for example, to listen presentations or speeches related to internet technologies, internet companies delivered by Minister of Telecommunications or presidential administration members, because in that case, you will listen to it and they will do definitely opposite. And well, I think you mean so-called Russian troll farms. I think inside Russia, Russians already studied how to resist it. So, because they have very specific style and unlike true media, unlike true reporters, they could be detected. So the skills of reading between lines somehow restored back in Russia.
I have a question, and then someone here, and then you. Okay. So my question, Alexander, is the situation, the political situation in Russia is quite desperate, and the thing is that majority of people, probably, or not majority, but a lot of people, they support Putin and they support his government, thanks to propaganda and thanks to like his own or oligarchy own medias. So my question is, do you believe that in the near future it can be improved? Because, for example, our mutual friend Dmitry, he told me he cannot believe in any change in Russia. That's why he left. So
it's passive support. It's actually really passive support of Putin. So if you find somebody who can go and die for Putin, I don't think you find a lot of people.
Okay.
Because during the summer protests, there were made some arrests of random people on the streets. We have kind of jokes that a little boy thrown a paper cup to a police squad and killed 8 people, and the others was so harmed in their feelings. So a lot of people was arrested randomly. And a stream of people, a huge line standing close to presidential administrations, thus just to get their slogan printed and stay for 3 minutes at the entrance. So I never seen that Putin's supporters, yes, there are few some, can self-organize themselves and present their opinions. Yes, we know that for some public actions, the people from schools, hospitals, municipal workers are being brought, even given some slogan, but then we find this slogan on the trash dams.
Yeah.
So don't think that's 90% of Russians
It's not so,
hardly
yeah.
support Putin. No, they will a bit affected by propaganda, but they definitely would not go and die for them.
Yeah, like I visited Moscow like maybe 5 years ago, and I was surprised that really a lot of university-educated people, they supported supported Putin. So it was a
Well, university-educated people, if they
Doesn't
work
mean-
at the university, they actually
Propaganda.
should at least keep silent. Or in some cases, on high positions, they should say that they're supporting.
Yeah.
And this you maybe compared to the huge meeting on the website, that the young people think that they are watching YouTube stream from a meeting on the streets, they are also participating in such meeting. So I hope that we'll collect such bigger.
So you're a believer. You believe it'll be better and
It will be much better because
Okay.
young people they really feel through things. And among young people also might be supporters of the full spectrum of ideas from far left to far right. But most of them see that what's going on official media is not true.
So we had a question somewhere here,
And also there.
and then you, and then you.
Thanks for your presentation, and I think I'll build on that question a bit and where you're going. Your last 3 questions were really great in terms of being very critical, critical thinking, and in terms of the role and the responsibility of scientists and engineers and technologists that are currently the ones, I would say, that have the power to build the system that is being introduced by the government right now. How did you come to question your role and your responsibility? And if you do think that there is a movement, how is it that others that have, the other technologists out there or the others that are a part of this right now, do you think they will wake up and question their role as well, and how?
Well, when I was a young student, I was doing not very good things, which now called hacking. Because you write a program, you run it, something happens, you prove your technological experience and technological superiority, and well, the whole computer system of department stops and two other groups cannot pass exam, for example. So at some place when you are young, you're just doing some things to have fun or, well, to discover something new. When you are growing up a bit, you start understanding consequences of your actions. You asked about my experience. So when I was just a programmer, well, I was doing things not very well, not thinking very much, but well, my professors were trying to explain me. When I started using other people as tools, become well, a little boss, I understand that my responsibility grows more and more. And well, how did I came to talking about this? When working as CTO at ISP and being responsible for some technological solutions, I just it's like nearly every lawyer in Russia is former police officer. And for what's a motto of police officer? First of all, everything prohibited. And if you see somebody in ranks, you lose your free will. So being a technical executive, I had to study laws and to explain to my bosses that we can build our network, we can connect our. I have studied law a lot and understand how, especially in Russia, you should understand not just directly read the laws and understand consequences of your actions, but you also need to think, okay, we will have corruption in this direction, and consequences will be this, or corruption in this direction, and consequences will be that. So I hope that nowadays everyone will think a bit more about technological responsibility. Again, when internet and computers came, I was teenager when computers came, and well, a bit after teenager when internet came. At that moment, it's just interesting thing. You are just testing your limits. Nowadays, I don't think that people massively need to test their limits so widely. And also, well, grown-up people and experienced people will explain them that. But again, we need to work together.
Thank you very much for your presentation, a very brave presentation in terms of everything. I wanted to ask you, we are having this kind of very strange phenomena in Slovakia, especially in terms of people who came from Soviet Union, which ran away from Soviet Union, which during Soviet Union were really like anti-communists, who today, for some really non-understandable reasons, are really strongly supporting like today's policy of Putin, the idea of Slovaks being like one big nation and whatever, and they kind of, when we analyze it and we look, I mean, my family ran away from Soviet Union. We have this kind of thing in my family as well, and we saw that people who ran away from KGB, not to be prosecuted, kind of crossed the borders, different type of ways, today are strongly supporting Putin, and they kind of eating the propaganda. And we have this also along the politicians who were dissidents in Czechoslovakia, who are strongly support Putin and whatever, annexation of Crimea and whatever, all conflicts fueled by Russia. So the question is, if there is a way how we can hack back, because probably this is a result of some kind of propaganda and fake news and whatever, and any kind of discourse which we have from the news coming and showing how Russia is getting up and the evil Western society is killing it back to the knees. The question is, if there is a resource or know-how which we can apply to show it to people without causing an immediate rejection of the information. Because there is a lot like anti-fake news sites, but they cause rejection immediately at the zombied audience.
I think there is no silver bullet, unfortunately. So in case of former Soviet Union's migrants, it's like they remember that good times, like that trees was big and ice cream was tastier and girls was younger. So it also works really well. I hope it would not work well for me, because I have when I was a teenager, I was really believed that first of all I will visit flowering apple trees on Mars, and maybe then see Niagara Falls. Only then. Actually, Soviet Union fell, and information, the great flow of information opened for me. I have chance to select this and select this, but I'm not trying to classify information as really good or bad. There are a lot of really good interesting information. And the problem is that the most people think that unusual things are dangerous. I think in this audience, when we see something unusual and unseen before, we find it interesting. But it is said that psychologists say that broader audience find it dangerous and start fighting and doing other things. Maybe something happens, something same happens to immigrants from Soviet Union. So they find something unusual in this new society, especially in newly developing society with new technologies. And then they trying to hold back to something they understand, the General Secretary of Communist Party, like Mr. Putin, and when strong hands, and they're just trying to back. I don't know. In Russia, we hope that the newer generations grew up and came. I was at the elections commission, the last elections in this September, and we definitely see the most actively voting people, and there was a great campaign run by opposition on this, but the most voting people was born in 30s, 40s, and 60s, and younger people just did not came to vote. Maybe slowly, young people with new open minds will replace the older ones. Okay, well, actually, we should talk about opting out. Let's try to get back to this topic.
If I can, I have a question also.
Okay.
About the passive support. Would you agree that the propaganda made them believe that without Putin there will be war? So we need one strong leader to keep a peace?
Okay, sorry, I missed the question itself.
If you would agree that the passive support could be motivated by this belief?
Not sure. I think the passive support is it works like we would like to be with majority, and propaganda creates an idea of that Putin is supported by majority. It's funny thing that all public polls saying that Putin have support over 80%, but actually when some of these polls start showing, okay, that it's not 80%, but a bit slower, they stop making such polls. So this passive support is actually like for any community. We would like to be with majority.
Okay. Another question? There.
I'm not an active politician or politologist to talk about motivations of people around Putin. I can talk about internet and consequences.
Okay, not exactly internet, but I think, or at least I understood from something that you said, that there's alternative movements that are now starting to rise, to pop up. If you could elaborate a bit on this, because I don't think we hear about this in the West much.
By young people is very popular. Libertarian Party. So ideas like this are very popular against among students of younger courses. Again, it's really difficult to say. The only actively and constantly actively participating opposition leader is Mr. Navalny, but he's not alone. he's building a structure in regions who, well, while he's trying to say something about corruption of officials on federal level, in some regions there are his offices which trying to talk about local issues. The political party system in Russia is actually completely spoiled. So we have United Russia with majority. We have 3 more parties in the parliament, and in parliament they are mostly voting like others, be opposing on safe things. And we have 60 more political parties which definitely control from one control point. I think again younger people with real feeling of what's true and not will take more power in few years. There are local activists who tries to do something. Another activities, it's not political activities, ecological activists, but not wide topic ecological activists, but for example people who try to save the forests in their region or fight wildfires in their region. They are active. Very active movement now against building new trash dumps in regions. So somebody from Putin oligarchs' friends trying to export unsorted trash from Moscow region to further regions just for storing in without sorting and something like. And in those regions uprisers activities against that. They're being suppressed with typical things like importing, bringing police squads from neighboring region. So if local police squad would not go against local people, the others will bring it. But it's still uprisers. People stopped fearing. So that's what happened then on this summer protests. Even under risk of being arrested or harmed, people went out to street. It surprises. I'm not sure it would be as big as the Soviet Union fall, but I hope. And the internet is one of our tools.
Question?
Hello, I'd like to ask if the new measures from the government to access the internet are going to in Russia are going to be similar to what is happening in Turkmenistan, the Turkmennet, from which is kind of like internal net just for the country, and it's very hard to go outside of the Turkmennet. Is it going to be something like that?
It's really difficult to be something like this. Because, first of all, Russian internet until 2010 was developed completely free. Until last year, the Russian internet, if you measure it by number of companies participating in global routing, was the second biggest in the world. United States, Russia, then Brazil. Development of Russian internet have stopped few years ago. While, for example, United States still develops and Brazil still develops, and Brazil overtook us last year. So Russian internet is big, and it was developed by the lead of invisible hand of market. Unlike Turkmenistan, unlike North Korea, like Azerbaijan, Belarus, where the state monopoly. And Russia is still part of Europe. Council of Europe, it pretends to be European. So they can say, oh, we have state monopoly now. No. Russia needs to pretend to be European. So the changes will be slowly. They want to do this. They try to legislate it this way and that way. Previously, they tried to get control, right to control even internet over institutions like International Telecommunications Union. Well, they have not succeeded because International Telecommunications Union is not about internet. So already with this content blocking measures and data retention measures, internet infrastructure in Russia costs times more than the same internet infrastructure for the same number of users, for the same capacity than in other countries. Instantly, it would not be like this, but our government is working on this.
Question?
Well, thank you for the presentation. I've not actually a question, but thinking about Russia, there are also positive things coming to my mind. Thinking of Snowden example, for example, the German government, for example, is not giving him any asylum, despite he would like to come to Germany, as an example. Or for my personal case, the RT network, for example, you know this, it's state-sponsored, but it's an international network like CNN or Al Arabiya, for example. They are, they're talking about Bitcoin, for example, on a daily basis. This is there are not only bad perceptions of Russia and in the West. Just so it's the picture is big, and your view is the view of the censorship, maybe, but there's another picture like security, for example, because there's an international conflict going on, like the NATO East expansion, and the picture is quite big. I want to add that. View.
Well, word is not black or white. First of all. International security is actually one of the drivers of motivation for any government to do any stupid things. As Snowden said himself, he stays in Russia just because his passport got cancelled at that location and no one offered his asylum. Russia today, before 2014, it's English-speaking channel. And I was watching it just to practice my vocal English. And at that moment, it was channeled like with documentaries and a little bit of conspiracy. Like about freaking or like Americans does not support diversity very well, something like. But after that, it becomes full-scale propaganda. Very well done, very well sponsored, full-scale propaganda. And by the way, I think Kaiser Reports, who talks constantly about Bitcoin, it was started before that times. So it still works. But you should understand that you've seen a guy from Men in Black. Yeah. You should be careful with such guys.
I completely agree with you. I also think that in these days, RT is like just really strong Russian propaganda, like Putin propaganda. And about Snowden, the thing is that Snowden for Russian government is a really, how to say, very valuable thing, because thanks to Snowden, it is basically some kind of political advantage against Americans, you know. So I think from this point of view, we can see Snowden to be just a political victim, you know, yeah. And Russians, they are aware of his political value. So this is the thing. Yes. So I think.
The thing, sorry, about Snowden. That's remainings of Pirate Party, unofficially registered. We're running a conference related to cryptography, security, and something like. We tried to invite Snowden, but it's not possible. Yeah. He does not appear on public.
But the thing is that Russian government didn't provide him asylum just because they care about human rights. You know, you should be aware of that. Yeah, they provide him asylum because he can be a really effective political tool. You know, and this is what's happening. So. Yeah, and he also does, and Snowden doesn't like Russian government, as I know. Yeah. So he's like forced to stay there, because other countries refused him to...
And Mr. Putin does not like to change his opinion. So if once they let him in, unfortunately, they couldn't change it.
And back to Bitcoin. If I'm in Russia and I have Bitcoin, what can I do? What can I buy with Bitcoin today in Moscow, say?
You definitely will not have location like this. Because of Bitcoin, as I mentioned, Bitcoin-related information sites and services are pressurized by financial services, by central bank or Ministry of Finances. I know even cases when the coffee shops who started accepting Bitcoin stopped doing this. So definitely there is no such funny infrastructure like this at ATM terminals. There may be some machines allowing you to put things in. Another thing about thanks for this question, because I forgot to say this in presentation. This situation with pressurizing and random actions of state actors does not let Russian people to think about future. So it's maybe international corporations have plans for years and ahead, but small ISPs, small companies usually have planning limit 1 year ahead, or even maybe a few months ahead. So there is no such location like this in different things. The people who get a lot of bitcoins or were successful on bitcoins prefers to buy Tesla instead of building such space like Institute of Crypto Anarchy and creating these workshops or sponsoring conferences related to the future actually. Here on this conference we are talking about future, well, with some exceptions from past, but it's also, we should be based on this. That's a sad thing. Russian people do not feel that they have great future ahead. That's why the opposition grows up. The people like me is talking about what's going on. The young people start thinking, okay, we are now studying to graduate, what be next?
Okay, thank you a lot. And maybe last question, if you have any question. Okay, if not, so thank you a lot, Alexander, for this really inevitable presentation these days. Thank you a lot.
And thank you all very much, because actually I've been here and I've seen what you're talking about, how this place is organized, and I try to bring my experiences of how things might be in good back to Russia, saying yes, this is a great example to copy and well to work on. Okay, thank you very much. You are showing us a great example of people of future.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your feedback.